everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff. And today's subject, we're going to discuss the difference between assertiveness and bullying. How assertiveness can be good, but it can become bullying if abused, if used to advantage rather than to justice. I think is a good way to think of it.
There was a movement, popular, one of those popular kinds of movements 20 years ago, maybe 30, transactional relationships.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was called, something like that. And it was about explaining the difference to people about assertiveness, being assertive without bullying, and being assertive rather than being a pushover, and how to be assertive in a productive way. And I think it was useful for people who had not been exposed to the idea, but it's kind of faded. I've read a number of books over the years about that sort of thing, including how to be assertive and courteous in the face of bullying. There's a book called Intellectual Self-Defense. There's a number of works on the subject, but I think it's different because bullying and assertiveness. A lot of people there's a difference between assertiveness and aggression too.
Yes.
And so I think that's something we can dig into, especially in light of the virtues of honesty and courtesy and fortitude and so
compassion,
all of those. Sure.
Yeah. And
and strength.
It really comes down to, and what made me think about this for a subject was this weekend at an event where surprisingly disorganized, or at least unorganized, where, this is something that's been happening for a lot of years, and there's usually some guidance as to, where do you go, what do you do, where do you set up your stuff, this kind of thing. And most of the people I was around were there just looking around, waiting to see, were there any guidelines anywhere, put down there? No, nothing. And I said, well, in the absence of authority, I will exert my personality.
Well, and there is a saying, when you're put in charge, take charge. Yeah. Because people are looking to you for that. But when nobody's in charge, somebody has to take charge. And there was it's many years ago now, at a place I was working, I attended a kickoff meeting for a project, and every warning bell and red flag in my professional experience was going off, because it looked like time and money waster for no good purpose. But I asked these questions and asked questions, and it was clear it was disorganized. It wasn't going to go well. So I wrote a memo, an actual memo.
A memo. Oh my goodness.
And shortly after I sent that memo to the people who were involved in this, the boss of the project manager who was leading this kickoff came to me with a crumpled up printout of my memo, shaking it, and said, "What's this about?" I said, "Well, in the interests of the agency, there were some concerns that were not addressed in the meeting that need to be addressed." And their reply was, "That's not your job." To which I replied, "Well, nobody else was doing it, so I did." If somebody else had raised
the deeper implication being you should have, and
yes, yes. And they went off in a huff, and the project went forward, and I was proven correct. I moved some personnel around because of the the project. And again, the same person came to me demanding to know what I was doing. And I said, I'm
Your job, really.
assigning the staff in the places most appropriate to their skills. And this particular job is not making us any money. To which their reply was, yeah, it made $100 last month. So $100 doesn't even turn on the lights in the building.
Right.
I put a junior designer on that job who could spend 4 times the amount of time on the project and still be billed out at a lower rate than the senior art director who was on it. And so I said, it's my call. So turned out that the client was the wife of the head of the region. And so that's why we were doing the job. It was one of those, it'll lead to other things. No, it's not going to lead to other things. So I was assertive. I maintained calm. I was not, did not raise my voice. I stated the facts. I stick to the subject, very much in keeping with the rules of courtesy that we've talked about before.
Right.
And yet I didn't back down, and I was not intimidated. So, which is an example of also assertiveness. But before we proceed,
yes,
do you perhaps have a beverage this evening?
Oh, now that you ask, in fact, I do. It is a, let me see if I can do this without it disappearing. Nope. It's a blackened bourbon, which is to say that it is a blended bourbon, straight bourbon whiskey, finished in what they describe as a blackened brandy cask, a black brandy cask. I'm not sure if I've ever had a black brandy, but or what makes a brandy cask black.
Well, is the brandy black, or is the
I don't know,
cask heavily charred? The barrel heavily charred.
Brandy casks aren't usually charred. Well, I don't know. Maybe they took a brandy cask and charred it like you would a bourbon barrel.
Except those barrels are charred when they're brand new, before they have anything in them. So it would not be a brandy barrel before it has brandy in it. It would just be
I think they may have, what I'm considering, I don't know what a black brandy is. I've never heard of a black brandy.
Okay.
But black brandy cask. So maybe it's describing, the black is describing the cask, not the brandy.
Could be.
Maybe what they did was, this is just a theory, mind you, that they emptied a brandy cask, charred it like you would a new bourbon barrel, and then aged in that. I don't know why.
I will want the name of that particular brandy from you so I can look into it, or the bourbon.
Well, that's what it's called. It's called blackened.
Blackened. Okay. I'll have to look into it.
I don't have the distiller at top of my mind.
Okay.
But I'll get you. I'll have my people get with your people.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. As it happens, we seem to be on a theme tonight, without any pre episode coordination. I am finishing up here a smoked cocktail. I just got a cocktail smoker. It's a little thing you put, it came with little tiny hickory wood chips that you put in a little bowl at the top, and then you turn on and it generates smoke. And you have to light it and you generate smoke. And I put a topper on the top plate on this it's got a gasket in it and a hole in it with the tube going in. It filled this with smoke, left the top on while I was making the drink, which is called a dragon's breath. And it's bourbon.
What's with the theme?
Yeah, exactly. It's bourbon with a little bit of Cointreau, Saint Germain, elderflower liqueur, and simple syrup, and that's shaken with ice and then strained into. You take that away, and the smoke pours out, and you pour that in. I have to figure out how much smoke? Should I completely fill it? Should I let it dissipate? Should I smoke it before? Should I smoke it after? Because the first swig I had to hold my breath while I was drinking, because otherwise it was just a face full of smoke. But pretty tasty. So here you
All
go.
right. Well, cheers.
And still has that smokiness to it. It's,
And I will say that this has a very nice flavor to it. It's got a nice spicy bite to it, but still smooth.
okay,
So,
good.
all right, that out of the way.
So one of the aspects, and I've just been talking about this with some people I've been talking to for the book I'm working on, about punching up and punching down.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a quote from Sir Terry Pratchett, late Sir Terry Pratchett, that that satire is meant to poke fun at people in power. If you poke fun at people who aren't in power, it's just bullying. And
Who are hurting? I think the
or
quote
hurting, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, certainly bullying. One aspect or a salient aspect of bullying is the difference in power dynamic.
right.
That you can or you are able to bully someone because they perceive that you have some power over them.
The victim of the bully
yes.
perceives that the bully has some power.
Yep. Yes, has the can do that with and get away with it.
Yep. Were you ever bullied when you were a kid?
Yes. Well, I bullied. I think there is, and I don't want to put this in the wrong way, but I think that there is a certain amount of consent to a victim if you're being bullied because of that perceived power dynamic. There is, you allow yourself to be bullied in some ways. One of the things I want to get to is that once you perceive look for the truth of whether there is a power dynamic differential there when you are being bullied, because at the time the person who was trying to bully me, this was in junior high school, I guess, like 8th grade was the last time this was ever a thing, tried to bully me because they were bigger and physically stronger. The problem for them was they expected me to acquiesce to being bullied, and I did not. I broke their arm instead of allowing them to bully me. I didn't have any problems with them after that.
Yeah. But there are people who can't fight back in that way.
Right. That was purely, and that's what I'm saying, that was purely physical thing.
Right.
And I was willing to take a couple of punches if that's what it took for this guy to leave me alone for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
If it's in a professional situation or, some larger political communal sort of situation, yeah, that's the question is a lot more complex. I
right.
Absolutely saying, and that's why I didn't want it to come off the right way, that if you can be bullied and you have no recourse but to have someone do something to you that you don't want them to do. That happens
when there really is a power differential there.
Yes, whether
not
it's a
just
physical,
a perceived one, but a real one.
Right.
I think one other aspect,
one hopes that you perceive the real one in time to save yourself from an injury. But
well, and when I was in 6th grade, was getting picked on relentlessly by a fellow until I'd had enough and we fought, but kind of an inconclusive, sort of inept
in
fighting.
6th grade. Yeah.
But I went home and I told my parents about this, and they said, we've always taught you to talk to people and work out your difficulties, but if you can't and it's going to come to a fight, you're going to win. And they took me to a dojo and enrolled me in a dojo. And that was at the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, we were out playing softball, and this kid ran at me and jumped at me. And without even thinking about it, because I've been training, I just grabbed him and threw him to the ground and got him in a headlock and rubbed his face in the dirt and said, told him to leave me alone. And he did. And that was the end of it. I found out years later that nobody liked him. So nobody really minded my doing that anyway. But there are certainly with cyberbullying now, there are trolls online who suffer no negative repercussions
right
from their bullying. In the extreme cases, there are people who have kids who have bullied other kids relentlessly online, to the point of those people, the victims of the bullying, harming themselves.
Yeah.
And so school is a very unique situation because you're constantly seeing the same people every day. In a work situation, if somebody behaves that way, they'll get fired.
Yeah, you can take action.
There's recourse. In school, the school should take action, but they don't always, and it's hard to deal with. Cyberbullying is really difficult to deal with. So there is real bullying, and
yes.
Those of us who are in a position to help people who are being bullied, to stand up for people who are being bullied, whether it's online or in the real world, in the not in IRL, right, should have a responsibility to take action. And that is related to the concept of noblesse oblige, the obligation of nobility, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
Well, with any power comes responsibility. And noblesse certainly is a medieval term, a French term for nobility. Noblesse oblige, I was surprised to learn, was actually, as a term, the earliest reference I found to that was the early 19th century, from Honoré, the writer Honoré de Balzac, who coined the term noblesse oblige, the obligation.
After the revolution. Well, 100 years after the revolution.
Yet. Well, not quite 100. 1836, so 1786. So
okay,
60 years. Yeah, but
okay.
But the lack of noblesse oblige could, in some ways, the lack of fairness, the lack of equity, the lack of justice is a kind of bullying. And even noblesse oblige can be criticized, and has been criticized, as a means for the very wealthy, very powerful to feel like they're doing their duty, and their wealth is, their rapacious, predatory acquisition is justified by the fact they give a pittance to a museum,
Well, yeah, I mean, we can get back to, what early feudal arrangements were and how they worked, and by the French Revolution, if we're talking about that, it had so far lost its original sort of intent, and the fact that it had become hereditary for generation upon generation. The noblesse oblige concept, I should think, was about maintaining the responsibility of your position, that you are, from the early feudal standpoint. I mean, I'm sure there will be people who will argue this, but the idea was that you were put above your fellows, your community, because your responsibility was to protect them from outside violence.
Mm-hmm.
But as that system became entrenched and the members who were supposed to be protecting each other just kind of came to this agreement that, you know what, I'm not going to bother your people if you don't bother my people, and we can maintain our positions more easily, you know, if we're not always trying to expand our territories.
Right.
We've sufficiently expanded. We're, you know, it's antitrust kind of stuff where it's like,
Yeah.
we've all agreed that we're just going to, you know, plunder this area. I'm going to restrict my plundering to my own people.
Mm-hmm.
You do the same, and we won't have to fight each other. All we'll have to do is maintain power over our serfs. And
yeah. Well, and when you think about it, the very wealthy, and I'm not talking about people who are only moderately wealthy. I'm talking about the people who are the 1%, the 1% of 1%.
Yeah.
The people
whose names you don't even know. They're so
right.
rich.
The multi hundreds of $billion billionaires, the ones with the 100-foot, 200-foot, 300-foot yachts.
I've heard them called the Russian doll yachts, where they've got a boat inside their boat.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've watched some, I found a channel where a British guy who reminds me of Robin Leach doing, but he does tours of yachts.
Oh my God.
And he gushes over all of them. And the worst example, the most egregious example, was this one particular yacht that was, everything inside was Versace. Every piece of furniture, wall treatment, floor covering, bathroom fixture, everything was Versace, and he was just gushing over it. And it was a horror show.
It was completely tasteless.
Completely tasteless. It was too much, you know, a little bit of Versace goes a long way, but it was.
Who else have we seen whose lifestyle was surrounding themselves with gilded, over-designed furnishings and opulence for its own sake? And
yes,
I'm trying to think. I know I've seen the interior of a New York apartment somewhere
with a gold toilet.
Allegedly.
No, I've seen pictures of the gold toilet.
Well,
maybe it wasn't
pictures of a golden toilet, but even just, you know, the living spaces that we are obliquely referring to as just dripping with gold leaf and Louis XV style furniture, and without a tiny drop of taste or restraint shown.
I've heard someone, and it could be the person you are referring to, described as what poor people think a rich person is.
Yeah, and what stupid people think a smart person is.
Exactly. and the person is neither. I remember seeing there two, well, we're kind of getting off
yeah
track,
yeah let's not
so
do that this time.
one of the
one day,
yeah,
so we're not going to do it right now, but we might.
Yes.
Sometime.
Yes. How to be assertive without being a jerk.
Right.
Because there's a difference between assertiveness and aggression. It bothers me, for example, when people talk about the martial sport that we do in the Society for Creative Anachronism, when they refer to it as violence. It's not violence, it's physical.
Yes.
And it may be aggressive, but it's not violent. Because violence is, it's a different category of thing. It's not violence. And that means that that's somebody saying that who doesn't really understand what real violence is.
Well,
but it's assertive, it's aggressive. And I'd say it's aggressive, but assertiveness might be when you have a disagreement with somebody about whether the result of a particular exchange of
Mhm.
sword blows went one way or another, and somebody will, you have not only the right but the responsibility to assert what you perceived and what
Yes.
you conclude and what you think, not about how you feel, but really what you think. And the other person can do the same, and that's why they're independent marshals who can advise people as to what actually happened, because perception in the moment can be off. But
Yeah.
that's being assertive. And I recall an instance many years ago, in a crown tournament in the SCA. I was fighting a knight and I hit him, and he didn't react, didn't say anything, and he hit me. And I stopped and looked at him, and he said to me, "Well, what about that?" And the marshal came over and said, "Gentlemen, what's going on?"
Is there a question?
And I said, he said, you know, I saw, and my opponent said, "Well, the blow I threw was good." And I said, either neither of them were good or they were both good. And the marshal said, "Very well, we'll continue." And then I will admit, I got a little perturbed and allowed my perturbation to travel down the length of my sword into my opponent's helmet. So, but
Well,
that
but that's also being assertive.
it
That's
is, because I wanted there to be no doubt. I didn't want there to be any doubt. Now I learned something in that moment, and I recall it these many years later, about being assertive, but I didn't want to sacrifice courtesy in
right.
assertiveness, and it's not necessary to do so. Um, and it's different than bullying, where bullying is trying to impose your will on another person simply because you can, and not in a sports contest way of doing it, but in a way that is outside that agreement of sport where you're both competing.
Right.
It is interfering with someone else's life, their existence, and their being, and in a way that's done for for the bullies, for their own self-aggrandizement, for their own
Well, or for as we see now and I hate to use the phrase the Karen
oh
thing.
yeah, yeah.
I wish somebody had come up with another term for that rather than using someone's name.
Yes.
But because we both know several Karens who are very lovely people,
Yes.
and so I feel sorry for them. But the where it isn't, they are bullying them. These people we're talking about, the Karens,
Or Chad. I've heard
or
Chad
Chad.
for the
Yeah, I've
male
heard that
version
too.
of it. And again, I agree with you. I don't like the fact that it's named after a person, but
But these people are bullying those they assume or perceive as inferior to them in some sort of social or professional station,
right.
and are trying to, like as you say, assert their will for their own convenience, for their own. They don't want to. They don't think that they should be held to the same rules that everyone else is,
Right.
or they feel that they deserve more than they're getting from this person. That how dare this person keep me from the thing I want,
Or
or
make me do something I don't want, like wearing a mask, or
yeah, okay, yeah.
and
How dare you try and make me follow the rules that everybody else is following? Who are you to tell me that I have to follow the rules?
yes. And it often occurs in in a retail situation, some kind of service
Yep.
situation. And it I think increasingly, at least I hope this, I'm correct about this, companies are backing their employees who assert the rules that
Mhm.
in the business that everyone has to live by, rather than saying, as used to be, the customer is always right. No, the customer is always the customer, but sometimes they're full of shit,
Yeah.
and
I
we know
My
that.
experience
We
in
both,
retail was that the customer is almost always wrong.
yeah,
And your job as a service person, as a salesman, is to guide them to righteousness without upsetting them too much.
yeah,
But there is a point at which, nope, sorry, I've got just as many human rights as you do. Fuck off.
yeah.
you know,
Well,
uh,
and I think one of the things in that case, if you are confronted with somebody in a situation like that, a retail situation, I've seen videos of it happening on a plane and other situations where the employee has a responsibility to enforce the rules of the business for everyone equally.
mhm,
But equal is not good enough for a bully. They want superior. They don't want to have to follow the rules. They want to do things the way they want to. They feel simply out of a sense of entitlement or privilege that they can do whatever the hell they want. And more, those people, we neither of us likes the nicknames they've been given, but at least it's a recognized thing that
yeah,
there are people who are doing that now, because it
right.
didn't used to be, it used to not be as well known.
Well,
And
yeah,
it used to be that an employee who objected to if a customer objected to something an employee did, whether or not it was justified, the employee would be gone.
yeah,
Well,
usually.
businesses that aren't doing that as much now. They can't do that as much now because they're short employees.
Yeah.
Well, in the Middle Ages, well, excuse me, when a third of a quarter to a third to a half, depending on where you were, of the
Mhm.
population of Europe died because of the plague,
Yeah.
gave rise to a merchant class who
And a
and
professional class.
professional class that didn't exist before, broke feudalism completely. It was
Yep.
on the way out by then, but anyway, um, well, we're down 725,000 people have died in the past
Mhm.
18 months,
15, 15,
50,
18
something
months.
like
Yeah.
that. Now, not all of those people were retired or children. A lot of those people were working age and are not in the workforce anymore.
Right.
And so companies who are saying, hey, we can't find anybody who work for us. No, you can't find anybody who will work for you under the conditions that they used to, where
Right.
they're disrespected, the wages are too low, there are no benefits. You have to step up because now your business is competing with other businesses for a smaller pool of employees.
Now, this will, I think, may lead us to our next video of the so-called work ethic
Uh,
and how it has changed. And so let's not get too deep into that because I think we can save this for another episode. But let's talk about maybe the you know, in a professional situation, one can be bullied by one's employer, and that's
yes.
fairly common.
Yep.
Not even by your employer, simply by your superior. And in
Yep.
fact, I have found in my varied professional background that and a superior is more likely to try and enforce whatever power they think they have than more so than an employer.
Mhm.
Employers want loyal uh, people who will work for them willingly and effectively, right? So they will
Yes.
more often try and keep people happy and wanting to do their job well. Whereas a superior is more likely to want to maintain their power, that power differential.
Particularly if they have imposter syndrome, where they don't believe
Yeah.
that they actually, it's as imposter syndrome. I was explaining this to somebody that the less somebody knows, the more likely they are to think they know things, and that's Dunning-Kruger syndrome.
Yeah.
Whereas the more somebody knows, the more likely they are to feel like they're just pretending, because they actually have an idea of how much they still have to learn.
Right.
And that's imposter syndrome.
And this is where we talk about this is where humility comes in,
yeah,
and recognizing your true
yes,
level.
yes. It's not false modesty, and it's not an inflated ego. True humility is
Can save you from both of those maladies.
Yes.
Of
True humility requires honesty with yourself about yourself. But I've certainly seen changes in management styles, because there certainly have been, even in what would be considered professional settings, a lack of trust of the employees. And so a constant monitoring of their time and their output, in a way that results in people only putting in exactly, doing exactly what's required of them. Whereas when employees are empowered to do their best, they will go above and beyond. And I was one place I was working early on in my career that, well, like almost every place I worked, you had to keep track of the amount of time you were spending on particular jobs, because there was an hourly, it was billable hours. And the management put in a time clock on the wall, like a punch time clock thing. And I don't know who did it. It wasn't me, but less than 24 hours later, it was in a smashed heap on the floor. Somebody had smashed it, and nothing was ever said about it.
It just was quietly swept up.
Yeah. But one of the drives to get people back into the office now, I've seen this, and certainly the pandemic is changing the way people work. There are more tools for working from home. People are more productive working from home. But some people want all their employees to come back into the office because they can keep an eye on them. Well, if you don't trust your employees, the problem is either you're a person who doesn't trust, or you need different employees. And I found that the more the more empowered people are to do their best and encouraged to do their best, and the expectations, people live up to the expectations you have for them, or down to the expectations you have of them. And this has been shown in experiments regarding students, where teachers would, and it's, I think, unethical to experiment with children, but so it's not done anymore. It's this way. But
there's a difference between experimenting on and observing.
Well, yes, but the way this was done was that teachers were given like a room of kids and told this half of the kids were less capable and this half of the kids were more capable, have the room. But they were randomly assigned to this. But the kids who the teacher was told would perform better did, and the students who the teacher was told would not perform as well lived down to that expectation. So there's something going on in the way the teacher considered them. So, and I think that's a cautionary tale about how expectations for people.
Certainly, if you treat your employees as if they are lazy shirkers who will take every opportunity to skip out on work and do only the minimum. If you treat them like that's the way you think, they will eventually become that.
Yes.
They will
Yeah.
spend more energy trying to get out of work than doing well in their work.
Right. And I have seen people who, in a volunteer organization, have worked so hard and so effectively in ways that they don't in their work lives.
Yeah.
Because
Well, one assumes that they volunteered because this thing means something to them anyway.
Right. So if a company can make the work mean something to people, if they get invested in it and the success of it, they will work harder. But I think we're straying off.
We are again.
But all of this is related in some significant ways. And I did find a quote about that I think is related about treat those of a lower station or those lesser than you as equals, and treat equals as
with your superiors.
As superiors. And I've seen variations on it, versions of it. There was, when I was looking for this, the first thing that came up was something that a character in the Harry Potter novels said, but it was completely taken from something that had already been said. It was just well-known thing that somebody else had already said, and it goes back further. I haven't found the earliest version of it, but
I'm sure Socrates or Seneca or one of those guys had something to say about. But there was you sent me a quote about how the one I think you're referring to is treat your inferiors
from 1902, Printers Inc., which was a publication, published a statement describing the behavior of a gentleman. A gentleman is one who treats his inferiors with the greatest courtesy, justice, and consideration, and who exacts the same treatment from his superiors.
Right.
And
the language might be a little bit archaic for some people, but
well, inferior and superior,
I mean, exacting behavior from someone. What that means is you require them to behave towards you in a certain way,
which you have to be assertive to do.
Yes.
But also the idea of inferior and superior in that sense refers to not inherent worth, but rather social station.
Station, professional station.
Right. And anyone who thinks that we don't have an aristocracy, a hereditary aristocracy in this country, is not paying attention.
Right.
Because we do. But those people may have a higher income, higher social station, higher status, but they are not superior.
No.
And so.
And it's funny, if we dip into politics again a little bit, that the people who are most likely to claim you're no better than I am, oddly, are the ones that seem to be supporting politically the elite that they are so adamant about tearing down.
Yeah, and I think at some point we could simply discuss the idea of what elite means, both good and bad.
Yeah, sure.
Because it has both positive meanings and negative meanings, but is often used used incorrectly. So
right, yeah, it's like the phrase politically correct. It has become something that it wasn't originally.
Right.
So I don't know. Have we talked about this for almost an hour? Have we talked about assertiveness and how to be assertive enough? What is required to be assertive and courteous at the same time?
I think we have, although we ventured way off topic with a lot of other
we
things.
talk more about bullying than about being
Yes,
assertive in, within a
right.
courteous framework.
And so I would say the same rules of courtesy apply. Stick to the subject. Don't raise your voice. Don't call names. Don't insult somebody. Stick to the subject, which means also assertively standing your ground. And I don't mean necessarily physically standing your ground. I mean rhetorically standing your ground. But
right.
you also need to prove it. And if somebody is, and that's a rhetorical bullying of the kind you see on social media. But I will say that the rules I've posted before about courteous discourse,
Mm-hmm.
you don't owe a troll anything.
Right.
A troll, somebody who is not agreeing to terms and definitions, agreeing on what facts are, and is a fanatic. They can't change the mind and they won't change the subject. You don't owe them anything. And if you're familiar with the term pigeon chess,
Mm-hmm.
never play chess with a pigeon because it'll just kick off over all the pieces and shit on the board. Well, you don't owe the pigeon a game of chess,
Right.
and you don't owe trolls anything either. And it's that, no, I'm not allowing you to occupy space in my consciousness. I'm not allowing you to bully me into arguing with you. I'm not going to do that. Now, there are people I disagree with on a number of issues who we can agree on facts. We can agree, stick to the subject and still disagree, but we're doing so with mutual respect. Say, okay, I disagree with, we're looking at the same facts and think your interpretation of this is different from my interpretation, or your proposed solution of the problem is different than mine. That's different than name calling or bullying in ways. So yeah, stick to the subject, but also stick to your guns, as my parents would have said, without a gun. But if somebody is physically bullying, well, if you can get out of the situation,
right,
and which I realize in some extreme cases it's very difficult to do, but get out of the situation if you can. Get help, get other people help you.
So there's the difference between bullying, physical bullying, and outright assault.
Yes.
Certainly we're talking about adults.
Yes.
If you're physically weaker and are about to get beat up, get away, run away, do whatever you need to do to keep yourself from harm.
Well, and I think bullying is assault, but hitting somebody is battery. I think is bad.
If someone threatens you, you've been assaulted.
Yes, get away. Yeah.
Get away, or recognize that unless it looks like, if someone is trying to bully you but seems unwilling to take it to the physical level, sometimes it's good to recognize that you actually have the advantage there.
Yes.
If they are unwilling to actually punch you in the face, you have the advantage, because that's all they've got left. If they've gotten to the point where they're trying to physically threaten you, or trying to physically coerce you without getting physical, they are holding that back for a reason. And it's because they don't want to do it. They know that unless they kill you, you have a legal advantage.
Yeah.
And that can help some people stand their ground.
I had a boss once who I nicknamed the pit bull. He would be calm one minute and then screaming the next, and he just erratically went back and forth. I was in a meeting a couple of colleagues and I in a meeting with him, and he was discussing something very calmly, and then all of a sudden started screaming at us, and then would sit down and talk calmly again. And this went on, and I was thinking, I think if I said the right thing, I might be able to goad him into punching me. And I could take a punch from this guy. I would just have to determine for myself that I wouldn't block it and hit him back. Because then,
No, then you're defending yourself. You are
Right.
allowed to block and hit him back. If he
I know,
throws that
but
punch,
if I didn't,
right, then he would have nothing.
right. So, but he never did, but
And see, this is, to me, when you talk about bullying as separate from being a bully,
oh yeah.
my experience growing up is that's what bullies are. Bullies are lazy. Bullies don't want to fight. Bullies think they can get something without effort. If you make them fight, that's an effort they don't want to go to. It's not worth it to them if you're going to
Yeah.
make them fight. And that is what I was taught, that make them fight. Then you'll survive it. You know, you
Yeah.
might get a cut. You might get a cut here, or a split lip, or a bloody nose, or whatever. Make them fight, because if you make them fight every time, they'll get tired of it. They'll
Yeah.
get tired of having to fight you every time.
Well, it is a trope that we've seen in tons of movies
Sure.
about the kid standing up to the bully, and then that's the end of it. You know, the breaks the bully's perceived power to do
Right.
that. So,
And it has been true for me.
well, yeah, and I found it similarly. A lot of times, I think one of the best techniques, and again, I recommend the Intellectual Self-Defense book,
Sure.
and there are others on that along those lines, on rhetoric. But I choose, if somebody's being trying stuff like that, I will often choose to ignore it as if they don't exist for me. Because once you acknowledge what they're doing, you've allowed them to enter into the conversation or into the situation. And if I don't allow it, then that can stop it. Sometimes though, they will keep pushing, and then you can't ignore it. And there was a case many years ago, and it was a fellow who hurled insults, and it was all online. You said of him that if he said in person to people in a bar the things he was saying online, he'd get punched in the face.
Yeah.
But he was he had keyboard courage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I kept saying, ignore it. Just, don't give him air, ignore him. Which I was doing even when he called me a long-haired, effeminate prima donna.
Well, I mean, to be fair,
Oh, yeah.
you're not effeminate. You're not
right.
effeminate.
Thank you. Wouldn't it'd be prima donna. So
Yeah. Okay. True. But let's gender specificity is not a thing anymore. So,
well, it is in Italian. So still.
well, the romance languages,
which they're struggling with. All the romance languages are struggling with, and developing new non-gendered forms of language. But he finally quoted me online saying, well, he said this, and here's what it means. And he was using my words to bully in his efforts to bully other people. And I couldn't let it go without response. And so I said, I've ignored this, but you have misinterpreted what I said, because here's what I said and here's what it meant. And by the way, stop it. You're you are behaving badly, you are violating your oaths of courtesy and
Mhm.
all the other virtues. I think that's when he came back with calling me a long-haired prima donna effeminate.
Ah,
Um, so
again, how dare you hold me to the standards that
right,
everyone else
right.
should be? Yeah.
And he was by his own actions irrelevant, but I refused to be bullied, but he wouldn't do it in person. Now, my mother, from whom I learned the rules of courtesy, also practiced, though she never called it this, what I think of as weaponized courtesy. And she once said to me, because she worked in retail for a long time, and she went from the bridal department to the maternity department to the infants and children's department in this
Oh, so she had
department
the
store.
same customers
She's
for.
for a long time, and she dealt with the worst bridezillas who only got worse with practice. And she said to me once, people come, some of these women come in and they're terribly mean and rude and horrible. And she said, the meaner they are, the nicer I am to them.
Mhm.
And then she leaned in and said, kind of sotto voce conspiratorial tone, the nicer I am, the meaner they are, the nicer I am, because they really hate that. And it's true. And I have found that by maintaining your composure, by maintaining your chill, your calm, and maintaining your own courtesy, that the rantings of bullies, rhetorical bullies, are less likely to affect you. Now, that can be very difficult, and I am talking about adults, because children should be protected from bullies,
Mhm. Yes.
or learn learn how to protect themselves from bullies as well, both rhetorically and physically if they're able. But for adults, there are few adults in a lot of situations. There are few adults who are actually going to try to physically assault you,
Right.
and you
Exactly.
can often see the precursors to that. The the chin out and the chest out and the you
Well,
know
see that, but
and
that's the thing. That's a bully who puts his chest and his chin out, that's all he is. He's a bully.
right,
A guy who's really willing to fight
he doesn't
will
do
just
that.
start fighting.
Right, right.
And if you start
um
fighting by putting your chin out, I'm all for that fight.
yeah,
Let's have that fight.
yes.
So yeah, I actually saw a TED talk one time about a guy who's talking about bullying and how to deal with a bully or someone who's insulting you in sort of as a precursor to a some kind of confrontation. And his method to diffuse things was to first kind of own whatever they were saying
Hmm.
and then turn it back on them, like said, yeah, well, you're just a wimp. The guy would like go, yeah, I do kind of struggle with physical stuff. I'm not very good at that. You're obviously an athlete.
Right.
So, and I wish that I was born with the gifts you got.
Can I buy you a beer? Yeah,
Yeah, that's
diffusing that kind of
yeah.
I've
Now,
heard
how
it
does
just
somebody stay mad at you when you say something like that to them?
right.
And
We
that was his
compliment them. Right.
compliment,
Yeah.
and make it a kind of a sincere compliment. They
Right.
have to kind of acknowledge, if pointing out the power dynamic is was kind of the thing there, that
Right.
saying, you know, you really look kind of stupid asserting yourself. You're obviously could beat my ass. You know, threatening to beat my ass makes you look kind of a jerk. You
Mhm.
look, maybe you ought to reflect on that a little bit. I think was the tactic there.
Yeah.
And make everyone else around them
Well,
realize it.
that's the message to everyone else, but the message that the bully heard was complimentary,
Yes,
and
right.
that would stroke their ego, so, and diffuse the situation, hopefully.
Right. But I think it's more than just an empty compliment, like,
Yeah.
man, and I really like your shirt. That's
Yeah.
it's more than that. It's
Right.
pointing out the differences, pointing
Yep.
out the superiority in this conflict. And why do you really need to do this? Why do you need to pursue this avenue to make yourself feel better?
Yep.
So, and I
Well,
thought,
or the I think one of the other things that the fellow, because I think I've seen the video, did was somebody said something to him. He was demonstrating this and tried to bully him, and he said, he said, "You're in my space." He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but my father just died and I'm not really, aware of my surroundings, and I'm really bothered." And and other people around are hearing this, they'll say, "Hey, leave the poor guy alone."
yeah,
And so
yeah.
come to your defense. And I think it was really
I mean, it takes a certain amount of thinking on your feet,
yes. Yeah.
but
Well, and we're also practice to
yeah,
do
having a
that
few
sort of thing. Right.
pat strategies
Right.
would be
Exactly.
worthwhile, I suppose.
So now I think we have talked about this, but I do think if you're being bullied and you don't know how to deal with it, you can't. Certainly, if you are feeling physically threatened, get help.
Yep.
If you are being bullied, whether it's in person or cyberbullied, and you can't deal with it, get help. And I think that it's incumbent on people who can help to help.
Yes.
And I know I've done this. I was reminded of this. I'd completely forgotten, but I think you've done it too. There was a young woman there was a guy who was obviously pushy and obnoxious, and so I just went up to her and said, "Oh, your appointment is coming. They'll speak to you now. Please come with me." And I just took them away, and there was no appointment. There was no, and she thanked me.
Yeah.
Said, well, it's, and I honestly, I've done that so many times. I forgot about that particular incident,
Oh,
but
sure.
it's because you can see the body language. You can see if somebody is uncomfortable. You can
Right.
see if somebody's, too close and leaning in and won't let the person get away and the other person's uncomfortable. You can see that if you get your face out of your damn phone and pay attention to the people around you.
Well, and the situation that you're describing too also allows you to extricate someone without continuing a confrontation.
Right.
You don't have to challenge them. All you've
Right.
got to do is get her out of the situation.
Right.
And that was it. You just extricated her, and
Right.
they were left with nothing. You
Right.
didn't have to, step up. Hey, these guys bothering you.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do that. You just said,
Right.
"Oh, excuse me, miss, but they're ready to see you now, and you
Yeah.
really need to hurry."
and the I've seen that as advice since then, because this was a long time ago. This particular one that I was reminded of, a particular incident I was reminded of, I've seen advice that says if you see somebody being bullied or harassed, ignore them and just start talking to
Right.
their potential victim,
Yeah.
right? As if, hey, just sit down and pay attention to them. I've also seen the advice of making eye contact with the bully, but that could go either way. That could be viewed as confrontation.
Yeah.
So,
But it's a sort of, I see you. I see what you're doing.
mhm.
Be aware that there's a witness.
Right.
That's what that is.
So then you take out your phone and you record it. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Like all those people on that train recently. No, never mind.
I've seen a number of lots of videos of people behaving badly. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
so we are advocating a level beyond just record it.
Right.
If you don't think you can do anymore, if you are unable, if you think that you are going to put yourself in danger by doing any more than that, then fine, record it. Be a witness.
Right.
Be a vocal witness.
Right.
Wait for the authorities to show up and make sure they know what really happened.
Right.
Be that
Right.
person.
Yeah.
If you can intervene, if you can extricate someone from a bad situation, do so, but you've got to keep yourself safe too.
Right.
But we are advocating that if it's possible to help, not just witness, but to help, do it.
Exactly.
And enlist the crowd if you have
Yeah.
to. Say, are we going to let this guy or this person do that? I don't think come on, let's
I would make it a positive statement instead of a question to the crowd. Say, hey, we're and just automatically include everybody. We're not going to stand for you doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
So
hey, we're not going to let you. Right.
Right. Forward. Wait a minute. Where is it?
All right. Then,
okay. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think we've just explored the difference enough.
Yes.
That was the real thing. The assertiveness is good. Assertiveness is necessary. Assertiveness is something you deserve to be. You need to be assertive and deserve to be assertive when you are in the right. And bullies should be addressed in the most appropriate way whenever possible.
Yep. And if you're assertive because you think you're right, you have to recognize the possibility that you could be wrong and accept that. Right. And that's a part of humility too. But so be able to support what you say. Now I'm shifted from anti-bullying assertiveness to assertiveness about your conclusions, not opinions, but conclusions about things based on facts. But there's assertiveness in that too, but have facts for it. And again, you don't owe trolls anything.
Right.
So there are people who won't be convinced no matter what. And
I'm happy to defend an opinion as long as anybody cares to talk about it. But
that's your opinion.
It is my opinion. And my opinion is I am the expert on my own opinion.
Exactly.
And that's, but the recognition is that that's all it is. I don't have any emotional or personal investment in that opinion. This is just on the facts I've gotten so far. This is the opinion I've come to. You can change my mind if you have more facts or different facts or better facts or whatever.
But that's the difference between something that's an opinion and something that's a fact-based conclusion.
Right.
And de gustibus non disputandum est. There's no disputing about taste, matters of taste. But that's what people often like to argue about. The best band in the world, man, was, but IPA sucks. Well, that's provable fact, but so
well, at least between the two of us, I think anecdotally we agree there.
Yes. But it is a matter of taste. Those who have it and those who don't.
and I think between familiars, between friends, we can both argue, gin is the best liquor ever invented by man. It is an artist's touch brought to liquor, and you can have the exact opposite opinion, and knowing that both of us are just holding opinions.
Yes,
we can say those things to each other, and it doesn't matter. We know that we are arguing, we are stating our opinions, and you can have yours and I can have mine, and we're both as right as we want to be.
Because we are the experts on what our own opinion is.
Exactly.
I will say, even though it's way off topic, there is a type of gin, maybe two, that I will voluntarily use in a cocktail that I will voluntarily drink. And it's called an Old Tom gin. It's a pre-prohibition formula barrel-aged gin. So there is way, way less juniper in it.
Mm-hmm.
And in a mixed drink, make a cocktail with other ingredients, it can be acceptable.
I can find it somewhat palatable.
Yeah. No, it can actually be really good. Depends on the cocktail. There's also I've had a cocktail with a saffron infused gin that was similarly less junipery, and also actually enjoyed that as well. But London dry gin,
even the most intractable I don't know, opponent of a thing can find with sufficient erudition, can find something that satisfies them.
Yeah, but my mother liked to watch Lawrence Welk, and my father couldn't stand it.
Mm-hmm.
So she would watch Lawrence Welk, and he would do something else. So, and that was fine. My mother thought it was fine, but my father told me once how the clarinetist Pete Fountain,
Mm-hmm.
who was known for jazz, and my father was a jazz drummer, said, yeah, he played with Welk for less than a day, because he started improvising and was told not to, and he got up and walked out.
All right, he asserted himself.
He did. And that's the thing. There are consequences potentially for asserting yourself, but there are definitely consequences for not asserting yourself.
Yes. There you go. There, an outstanding ending for our session this evening.
Thank you.
So we will see you all next time.
Yep.
Well, you'll see us. I can't promise that we'll see you. Medium doesn't work that way.
Can't you see them? In any case, I can see them.
You can
see what you're doing there. I see what you're doing.
Hey, get your hands out of that. Anyway, in any case, next time we see you, until then, be thou
a good night
and true.